Monday night Zoom meeting. We've got an exciting testimony tonight from David Hamilton. And tonight we're being seen by people in Latvia, Uganda, all around the world. Probably the United States will be joining us soon. But people are watching all over, and it's great to have such an audience all over the world. And tonight, as I say, we've got David Hamilton. If you are on Facebook, a Facebook page, please share this with your friends. And if you have any questions, send them to Paul Fenton for the end of the meeting. If you're on Zoom, again, you can send a message on Zoom to Paul at the end of the meeting, any questions. And so tonight, as I said, David has kindly come to share tonight. You know, this is an example where it says in the Bible, the vilest offender who truly believes that moment from Jesus, a pardon receives. And really that is the testimony of David Hamilton. So I'm going to invite David to come and share his story of how he came from a terrorist into the kingdom of God. David, over to you. Unmute yourself and come on. You need to unmute. There you go. Over to you, David.
Okay, well, indeed, I really enjoyed our time of worship there. Yeah, this whole time in lockdown, I'm not only saying this, but I'm telling you the truth. I think that is the best voice I've heard singing. Sometimes the music on Zoom can be awful, but I really was touched just by that couple and their music and the girl leading us into God's presence. It is all about Him, God's grace in our lives. Where would we be without Him? Isn't that right? And so I feel honored tonight to share with you my story. I was not searching for God, not at all, but He was searching for me. I remember I put in my Bible in jail, I wrote this in the flyleaf, not because I was in prison that I found Jesus, but because I was in prison when Jesus found me. I was not searching for Him, but I thank God that He intervened in my life, revealed Himself to me, and I've been a recipient of His grace for over 35 years now. In fact, it's not as 40 years because I got converted in 1980. And I just want to share how that came about. I have to say this at the beginning. Sometimes if I haven't given my testimony in a long time, when I start to share it, you relive it again. And you feel what you first felt. And there's times I get emotional thinking of God's grace and His mercy and His great love. Where John the Elder said that, oh, what manner of love that God has bestowed or lavished upon us, that we should be called children of God. And he says, that's who we are. And I want to share how God broke into my life. As a young lad, I think John has a photograph of me. Was taken just months before I went into prison. But it was me at the age of 18 as a skinhead. And yes, that's it. Don't look at it too close in case it frightens you. But that was me just prior to my arrest. I'd been involved, just in the conflict and as a street gang member fighting with Catholics and all. But I had family blown up in the Omagh bombing, and it was full of hatred. And it just consumes you then. And I started to have these feelings I wanted to fight back against the IRA. I thought, we are Protestants. We are defending Northern Ireland. And I called myself British, not Irish. I didn't like to be called an Irishman. There's times I would have hit people with a hammer to help me remember, I would say that I was an Ulster man. But I had on my arms all these tattoos, and they're all covered over now because they used to have all kind of political statements, but this actually was my prison number. And this said, "No surrender for God in Ulster." And this used to be an Ulster flag, but now it's turned into a tiger. I remember somebody was looking at it and says, "Tiger, it looks more like a pussy cat." I says, "No, but when I got converted, God took away the violence in me, and it was the same for the tiger. It is a big pussy cat now." But seriously, I had all these tattoos across all over my body. Most of them were political, kill all Irishmen for God in Ulster. And at 17, I got involved, and it wasn't by choice, not at all. I was in a youth club one Friday evening, and we were there about an hour when this man came walking in with the combat uniform on. We were all looking at him, and he walked across and he opened the fire exit door, and two other men came in with uniform, and they sat them down on the table tennis table, and they said, "We are starting a Protestant paramilitary group to fight the IRA. Who wants to fight the IRA?" Well, most of the guys put their hands up. If you didn't, somebody dug you with their elbow, and then you put your hand up. But I was giving a talk in a school many years ago, and somebody said to me in the classroom when they asked the question, "Was it peer pressure that made you join?" And I thought, that's a very good question. But I said, no, it wasn't. Nobody could make me do anything that I didn't want to do. But it was peer influence, because my friends got involved and were involved in the gangs and the fighting and everything, and all of the conflict that had erupted in '69. This was the early '70s. I decided myself then, when this man asked for volunteers to join, and I thought, I want to fight back against the IRA. They've attacked my family, and I just had a hatred then for Catholics. And somebody made a suggestion not long after that perhaps it would be better if we burned Roman Catholics out of their homes who lived around us in Rathcoole. And this is, I'm sure, strange to many who would be listening to this. I had Roman Catholic friends when I was 9 or 10, and we would play football as normal kids. But one of them was a boy, and his name was Bobby Sands, who became the first man to die in the hunger strike in 1983. If you had told me when we were boys kicking a ball round the field that we'd end up enemies or hating each other or end up in prison on opposite sides, I could never have imagined that to be so. But that's what happened. When I went into jail, I remember watching Bobby Sands and realized when I saw his picture, his photo on the news, and I realized this was an old friend of mine when I was a young boy. But now he was a sworn enemy. But getting involved at that time, I did go around and I threw petrol bombs. That was probably my first act of terrorism. But I burned many Roman Catholic families out of their home. And the reason being, I thought Protestants will move into our area and it'll become a Protestant area. And you know what? That was happening all over the province of Ulster. People were moved out of their residence wherever they were living. Catholics were put out of Protestant areas, and Protestants were put out of their homes in Catholic areas because everyone said it was safer to be with your own. And that's what happened then that caused that division. And you know, my youngest boy had an experience when I was in jail. I was converted at the time, and my son was 8 years old, and he went to stay with my mother in the country, not in Belfast, in County Tyrone. And my boy was out playing in the street, and he came running into the house and sat down. And my mum saw there was something odd about it and said, "Are you okay?" And my son says, "Granny, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And she says, "What did you do?" And he says, "I didn't know." And she says, What are you saying? What did you not know?" And he says, "That boy I was playing with, he's a Catholic. But honest, I didn't know." And my mum had to kneel down and say to him, "Here is not like Belfast. You can play with Roman Catholics here in Cookstown. Don't worry. Don't worry, son, about playing with Roman Catholics." But you know, that was the first time my son had met a Roman Catholic, and he thought he was doing something wrong. Isn't that horrendous to think that our children would grow up in that, you know, so split community that it was just, you know, they were totally separated from one another. But going back to my own story, I did get involved in what was called the Ulster Defence Association. But at that time, it was building barricades and things to protect your own area. It wasn't long after that a man said to me, "We're going to start weapon training." And so I was told to go to a house, and indeed that was the start of us being taught how to use weapons. It was maybe after a month or two, the man said to me, "David, do you want to mind the gun? You can take it home with you and bring it back next week." And I thought, right, okay. I was 17. I went home that night with a gun, and up in my bedroom, I was looking at it and pushing it into the waistband of my jeans and all, looking at myself in the mirror. And then the thought came to me, what if they ask you to shoot someone? And I thought about it for a minute or two, and I thought, I'm not just going to shoot somebody for being a Catholic. Not at all. But if they prove to me that he's IRA, then I will do it. And that was the decision. I want to say this, you know what my next thought was? If you kill someone, it doesn't really matter what you do after that, you're going to hell. And that was just the way I looked at it, but it was not a strange thought to have. I thought if I murder someone, it means I'm going to hell. I can't be forgiven. But you know, I was arrested, just maybe 6 months later, and went into prison. I was put in remand. I actually turned 18 at that time in jail. I was there for a year, and I went for my trial, and I got sentenced to 5 years. At that time, you did 2/3 of your sentence. But I have to tell you this, you know, prison life in the early 70s, people will find this so strange, I'm sure. But you know, we were treated as prisoners, political prisoners. So we had political status. Do you know, we wore our terrorist uniform in jail, not prison garb. We had bomb making classes during the day and weapon training in the afternoon. We had a whole political regime where you get up in the morning made your bed and everything, made a bed pack, and then went out in the exercise yard and they did physical exercise. Then we'd come in and have a coffee break, and then we had these lessons in terrorism. I kid you not, even in prison, they had real guns. And I can prove that very easily. There was men who were shot dead in prison by other prisoners. The last one that I was aware of was a friend of mine who actually had been converted and fell back again and got back involved and was in the Maze prison, and he was shot dead by 2 IRA men. So it was nothing new for men either to be blown up or even shot in prison. But the thing was, anyway, I was in jail at this time. I was only young, as I told you. I just turned 18, and you think you're hard and you're tough and everything else, but I'm going to tell you, I found prison hard. And I began to pray and ask God to get me out of jail. And you know, when you're in a crisis, you make deals. And I thought, God, if you get me out of jail, I'm going to go to church and all. I'll change my life. I was called back to court. I could not believe it. And the judge told me that he'd spoken to my old boss and they had discussed my case, and that because of the recommendation of my manager, the judge said he would give me a chance, and he reduced my sentence then. And he said that I would be on probation and on license. He did say to me, if you are arrested again, it'll be hard on you. Well, I got released. Could not believe it. I went home that Friday evening. Could not believe that I was out of jail. I got drunk that Friday night, and don't ask me why. But you know, to my shame, I joined the terrorist group the next night again. I don't know why I did that. I found prison hard, but I did it all the same. I thought if I don't, I'm a traitor, and that the troubles were still going on. There was bombings and shootings, and I felt you can't just give up the cause. And so I got back involved, but this time I joined what was called the Ulster Volunteer Force. And when I joined that, I was asked to go to a pub in Belfast. When I went up into the room, there was 3 men sitting behind the table, but they had an Ulster flag over the table. But you know, I think this will surprise you when I tell you. Do you know what was sitting in the middle of the table? A Bible. And the man in the middle said to me, do you believe in the Protestant cause? I said, I do. He says, are you prepared to die for the Protestant cause? I says, I am. He says, are you prepared to kill for the Protestant cause? I says, I am. He says, then put your hand on top of the Bible and swear an oath. That's what I did, you know. Terrible thing to do with God's word, but then I was blind and had no knowledge at all. But you know, I got involved in that particular group, and it wasn't long till I started to get involved in other things. Of course, I started off doing small things, you know, but you work your way through, and you eventually you will take part in everything. And when I was rearrested 4 years later, I was in police custody and I was questioned about murder, bank robberies, bombings, hijacking, stealing guns. And I knew if I was found guilty, I was going to jail for a long time. My solicitor told me it would be double figures, whatever my sentence would be. But I was put back in jail because there were serious charges. I was refused bail I went for the trial just over a year later. And when I stood in the dock then, there was a whole squad of us because of a Supercross. So we all were in court. And the police had visited me to serve my deposition, the papers that I was charged with. And when I looked at these, depositions, you want to see the size of these. It was like a phone book, a telephone phone book. I thought they were everybody's charges, but he says, these are just yours. And I put my head back in surprise, and he says, you're going down for a long time. And of course, I was being defiant. I said to him, I don't care you give me life. I am a loyalist. I am not ashamed of anything I've done. I says, I don't care what you do. And he says, the policeman said to me, we'll see how tough you are when you're before the judge. Well, I just laughed at that. And in fact, because of him saying that, I even said to my friends, listen, none of us are going to walk out of this trial today. We are all going down. And I said, do you know what? I think we should wear our UVF uniforms. Now, the UVF was an illegal organization. And I said, I am going to wear my uniform and show just what I think, that I am not recognizing this court. I tell you this, people, if you're going to stand before a judge, don't dress up as a terrorist. It doesn't help your case. We were all standing there dressed up like Thunderbirds, and the judge is reading out these charges. Hamilton, stand to your feet. What have you to say? And then he read out the charge. Have you anything to say? I says, yes, no surrender. The next charge. Hamilton, have you anything to say? Yes, I am a loyalist. And I kept shouting out defiance every time that he passed sentence. In the end, I knew, these were all adding up. I think it came to, if I get this right, I think it came to 70 years. I knew I would be doing at least 10 to 15 years in jail. And in the end, I was brought down into the cell after the trial, and I still had handcuffs on. And the door opened and my mother came in. She was crying. And I looked at her. I said, Mum, don't be crying. I am a loyalist, and this is a good cause. You should be proud of me. Oh, people, that was the worst thing I could have said. She shouted at me all the more. And she said, you're not talking to your friends. You're talking to your mother. And she said, this will kill me. This will kill me. She said, I can't visit you for 15 years in jail. And she cried sore. And then she said, David, you are a hopeless case. This is your third time in prison, and the sentences are just getting bigger every time. And I said, Mum, go home. I don't want to listen to this. Just go home. Give me peace. And she walked over to the door, and I heard the prison officer open the grill to let her out. And I looked over again, and I wish I hadn't, because she turned back and she shouted at me again, you're a hopeless case. There's no hope for you. That was hard to hear from my mum. I knew the heartbreak that it caused her. But I said to myself, you just have to do it, and that's it. And I honestly didn't think I'd survive 10 or 15 years in jail. There's no light at the end of the tunnel for that. But here's what happened. I was in jail a couple of years. I walked into my cell one night with a cup of tea. And as I walked in and looked at my bed, there was a bit of paper lying on the side of my bed. And I thought, what's this? And I picked it up and turned it over. It was a gospel tract. So I smiled and looked at it, and it said, Jesus Christ is coming back soon. So I laughed and I said to my cellmate, you listening? Listen to this. Jesus Christ is coming back soon. And then I said, to a cinema near you. And he burst out laughing. And I laughed too. And I rolled that track up in a ball and I threw it out the window, laughing to myself. I sat down on the bed and I was drinking my tea. I don't know how long afterwards this was, but I still hadn't finished my tea. But this thought came into my head. David, it's time to change. Become a Christian. I thought, where did this come from? I think I burnt my lip on the tea. I was saying, Christian, listen to me. Prison is bad, but church is worse. Who wants to go to church? We went to church in jail, but it was only to hear all the gossip and to get tobacco and things smuggled in. It was not because anyone had faith in God. But you know what? I'm sitting there on the bed drinking my tea and I thought, become a Christian? Where did that come from? And when I was sitting on the bed, I looked across on the bookshelf. And you know what? You're only allowed 6 books each in your cell. And one of them is always a Bible. And I looked up and seen the Bible. And many's the time I'd lifted it, not to read it, but you know, in jail when you had no cigarette papers, you would just rip a page from the Bible. I tell people I smoke Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I was a real holy smoker, you know. But you know what? I lifted this Bible and I flicked it open and I looked down at it and it was the old King James. It said, whence comest thou hither? And I thought, what does that mean? Hither who? What's it saying? And I closed it and put it back on the shelf and walked back over to my bed and sat down. 2 minutes later, I looked over again at the Bible and I thought, maybe I should read that. And I got up and I walked over, but I tell you, 3 times I did that, walked across and lifted up the Bible. And I was standing with the Bible in my hand like this, and my cellmate said to me, what are you doing? Reading the Bible? And I laughed. I says, no, you know what? I feel I need to get saved. And he started laughing, my cellmate. And here is you, a Christian. He says, you couldn't be a Christian. You're an evil man. And you know what, people? I felt that in my heart when he said that to me. And I just closed the Bible like this. But I was still holding it. And because he was looking at me and talking to me, I was still holding the Bible, but listening to him. And I says, why do you say that? And he says, you know, God doesn't love people like you. You're too bad. And I put my head down, and for some reason, I opened the flyleaf, the Bible, and there was a Gideon Bible. I tell people that there's this other terrorist group called the Gideons, and they plant Bibles everywhere. Yes, even in your prison cell, you'll find a Gideon Bible. Do you know what it said on the flyleaf? In all these different languages, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life. And I read that, and then I said to myself, I'm going to challenge the chaplain with this when I see him, because it says, whoever believes will not perish. And I said, that's not true. Do you know why? I have never doubted the reality of God. I've always believed in God since I was a child. I had no understanding for the need of salvation, but I'd heard stories about Jesus dying on the cross. But you know, I thought Jesus does not love people like me. No, he doesn't. And I thought, so I believe, but that verse is wrong then, because it says, if you believe, you won't perish. I knew I was going to hell, and I knew I deserved to go to hell. I closed that Bible and set it back up on the shelf. I was sitting down on the bed, and again, I was thinking, why am I thinking like this? And then I'm sitting there, and it happened again, this voice in my head. Do you know what I heard? David, it's God that has kept you alive. Now, first of all, everyone called me by my nickname. Everyone has a nickname, I think, in jail. I was called Packy because I was tanned and had jet black hair at 17 or 18 years of age. There was no white goatee then. But because I was brown and that, people said I looked like a Pakistani. And so they called me Packy. And that is the truth. My cellmate, his nickname was Bungalow. He had no upstairs. So that's why they called him Bungalow. He was looking at me and smiling. I'm looking over at him and thinking, what? It's God that kept me alive. Then I started to look back in my life to the things that happened to me. Never ever had I said, oh, that was God saved me. But you see, that night, God gave me revelation. You know, Paul says in Galatians 2, no man taught me the gospel, neither did I receive it from any man. But when God chose to reveal his son to me, and he uses that word, reveal, he says, but God sending him to go up to Jerusalem, he says, God told me by revelation. God gave me revelation that he had kept me alive. And I'll share with you quickly just a few of those. I had been sent out to put a bomb in a building, and I had not made this particular bomb, someone else had. I was just asked to deliver it. But I put this in the building, and as I was walking out to leave, I had set the detonator for 3 minutes. So I thought, if 3 minutes doesn't sound long, but it was enough time for me to get back over the wall and drive off. But that didn't happen. The bomb exploded prematurely. I woke up, never even heard the bang go off. I just woke up and I knew I'd been lying on the ground, surrounded with broken glass, and the building was on fire. And I shook my head, and I even seen bits of glass fall out of my hair. And when I looked, my clothes were cut to shreds. And I thought, oh, I'll be cut to pieces. But you know what? When I looked at the underneath, there was not a scratch on me, not a scratch. And I thought, why, or how am I still living? I had no answer, you know, but I escaped and got away. Another time, you know, I was sent out to do something else, and it ended up, you know, I got involved in serious things, but it ended up anyway, I got shot. And I was shot 3 times, and I was taken to hospital, and they took bullets out of me, but they left 1 bullet in me for a number of years. But you know, when the person had put the gun to my head, I had grabbed his arm and pulled it down. That's how he shot me in the foot. But he had planned to shoot me in the head. That night, when I'm thinking about this, I had these thoughts then that, was this God's intervention in saving me? I had been sitting in a restaurant after I got released from police custody another time, and I went out to celebrate. I was sitting in a restaurant with my girlfriend when the door clicked open, and I looked up and there was 3 gunmen. and I recognized two of them as, well, sorry, I've said that wrong. There was two gunmen, and I recognized them. But I looked across, and there was a fire exit door, and I thought I could run for the door and get away. I jumped up and ran across the room. They had said to me, "You're coming with us," but I thought, not a chance. I ran over and kicked the door to go out through the door, but the door remained shut. And I put my hands up against the wall, and they turned, and I ran up